Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring something that I think is pretty fascinating. It impacts almost every online interaction that we have, and it's something that you probably don't even realize is there. We're talking about configuration rules. So these rules are like working behind the scenes constantly. They're dictating everything from like the toppings you can get on your pizza to how complex software is built. Think of it this way. Every time you go to design like a product online or you're customizing an order, configuration rules are what make sure that you don't end up with like a small pizza with a deep dish crust or something. So, you know, we've got a stack of fascinating source material here that really breaks down exactly how this kind of hidden logic functions. And I'm excited to dive into it.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. So configuration rules, they're all about setting specific information during the configuration process to make sure that the customized products are configured correctly. And as a user, they really do give you a much better experience.
Yeah, so it's not just about avoiding like a pizza catastrophe, but really about guiding users to the best configurations possible. That raises a pretty fascinating question for me. How do companies strike a balance between offering that flexibility that we want as consumers, but also ensuring that we get a logical and functional end result?
It's a constant balancing act, and that's where all the different types of configuration rules come in. Our source material highlights several. We have things like bill of materials rules, boom mapping rules, configuration pricing rules, and many more. And each one of those plays a specific role in shaping that user experience.
Okay, let's unpack these different types. I mean, from what I understand, like a bill of materials rule is kind of like a recipe, right? It basically defines what the ingredients are going to be based on what you select.
Exactly. Let's just stick with that pizza analogy for now. So, if you choose a deep dish crust, the bill of materials rule ensures that you get the correct dough, the correct sauce, the cheese amount, all that good stuff. But it gets even more interesting when you start to look at these bomb mapping rules. So what these do is they link what you choose online, say, pepperoni and mushrooms as your toppings. They link that to the actual physical parts that are going to be used to make your pizza.
So bomb mapping rules are like the bridge between what I'm seeing on the digital menu and what actually shows up at my doorstep.
Precisely. That's exactly it. That they make sure that your digital configuration is accurately translated into a physical product. And then, of course, we have the configuration pricing rules. And these are essential for calculating the final cost based on all your choices. So, each topping, size, crust variation, all these things can influence the price. And those rules make sure the calculation is accurate.
That makes perfect sense. But wouldn't too many rules, especially those restrictive ones, stifle innovation? I mean, imagine wanting a really unique combination. How do you prevent these rules from becoming kind of a barrier to creativity?
That's a great point. The key lies in configuration hiding and recommendation rules. So hiding rules, what they do is streamline the choices by hiding options that are illogical or that are incompatible with previous selections. So you
Right.
wouldn't even see the option for a deep dish crust if you'd already selected a small pizza. And recommendation rules can suggest additions based on your current choices, kind of guiding you towards combinations that work well together.
It's like having a virtual chef in there, kind of nudging you in the right direction. But what about those situations where you absolutely need a unique combination, something outside the norm?
Yeah, there will always be edge cases. But the goal of configuration rules is to balance flexibility with usability. It's about making the process intuitive while still allowing for a reasonable degree of customization.
So it's not about eliminating creativity altogether, but rather providing like a framework that can actually foster it.
Precisely. The power of configuration rules lies in their ability to adapt and evolve as user needs change. For instance, configuration constraint rules. Those define what you cannot choose based on previous selections. So they prevent incompatible combinations, but can be adjusted to accommodate new product options or shifting customer preferences.
Yeah. These rules are starting to sound less like restrictions and more like dynamic guidelines that really shape the user experience.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance. But the aim is to enhance user experience, not limit it. For example, configuration recommended item rules. Those can suggest additional items to your configuration based on your current selections. So imagine selecting a specific type of sandwich and the system automatically recommending chips and a drink with it.
So it's like those frequently bought together suggestions you see online all the time.
Precisely. Each rule plays a specific role, and when they're all combined, they create a nuanced and dynamic experience.
Okay, so we've got a handle on the various types of configuration rules and their overarching purpose. But how do these rules actually work on a technical level? What's the logic behind them?
At their core, each rule consists of two fundamental elements. You have a condition and an action. Think of the condition as the trigger. It outlines when the rule should be applied, and the action is what happens once that condition is met.
So it's like a cause and effect relationship. If this happens, then that occurs.
Exactly. The source material highlights three types of conditions: always true, simple condition, and advanced condition. The always true condition is straightforward. The rule will always be activated regardless of other selections. Think of it as a default setting.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about those simple conditions? How do those differ?
Simple conditions are based on specific attribute values that you choose. For instance, selecting a deep dish crust. That could be the condition that triggers a particular action, like adding a specific type of cheese or adjusting the baking time.
Okay, and then those advanced conditions, those sound a bit more complex.
They utilize BML, that's a scripting language, to define more intricate conditions. So imagine needing a rule that only applies when you select a specific topping and choose a certain size pizza. That scenario requires a more complex condition that a simple attribute selection just can't handle. That's where BML scripting comes into play.
So it's for those really specific scenarios where a simple condition isn't nuanced enough.
Right. The key takeaway is that regardless of the condition type, it's always evaluated first. And if that condition is met, the corresponding action is triggered.
This is fascinating. It's amazing how much logic goes into something as seemingly simple as an online order.
And it's not just about the individual rules, but it's also about the order in which they're processed. Our source material emphasizes the importance of what they call the order of operations. This hierarchy ensures that actions occur in the correct sequence.
Why is that order so crucial? What could go wrong if a rule fires out of sequence?
Imagine a rule that calculates the price of your pizza before another rule adds extra cheese based on a specific topping. Your pizza could end up costing less than it should because that extra cheese wasn't factored into that initial price calculation.
Yeah, that's not a mistake you want to make. It seems like even a slight change in the rule order could have significant repercussions.
Absolutely. Maintaining the correct order is essential for everything to function as intended.
Okay, so we've covered the various types of conditions, and we've talked about the importance of their order. The document also mentions a configuration context attribute. What is that all about?
That's a relatively new feature that allows for even more tailored rule behavior. What it does is it provides the system with context about the type of operation being performed. So are you creating a new configuration? Are you modifying an existing asset? Or are you maybe searching for a product?
So it's like giving the system a heads up about what the user's actually trying to accomplish.
Precisely. This additional context enables administrators to define rules that are triggered only in specific situations. So, for example, a rule might only fire when you're modifying an existing asset, but not during the initial creation phase.
So it's all about making the rules more intelligent and context aware, which ultimately should lead to a better user experience.
Right. Now, another key concept to understand is the configuration hierarchy. Think of it kind of like a family tree for your configuration rules, where broader categories cascade down to more specific products.
Okay, so how does this hierarchy affect what I see as a user?
Remember our pizza example. So let's say you're choosing a crust. Well, the hierarchy might dictate that certain crust options are only available if you first selected a specific pizza size. So the rules are all interlinked, and they create this logical flow based on your choices.
So it's about guiding the user through the process in a very structured way and ensuring that each selection leads to a coherent and functional outcome.
Exactly. This hierarchical structure also simplifies rule management for administrators. They can set general rules at the top level and then refine them for specific products further down the tree.
Okay, so we've covered the various types of rules, how they function with their conditions and actions, and even how they're structured within a hierarchy. What about managing these rules? Can they be modified or updated as needed?
Absolutely. Administrators have a lot of control over configuration rules. They can edit them, delete them, and even reorder them.
That sounds like a lot of power. Are there any tricky aspects of managing these rules that we should be aware of?
There are a few things to keep in mind. For instance, the order column, which determines the precise sequence in which rules are processed, that can be a bit tricky, because even slight modifications to the order can significantly impact the configuration's behavior.
It sounds like a very delicate balancing act.
It is. And then there's row grouping, which, if it's not handled properly, can cause errors. Think back to those pizza prices. If row grouping isn't set up correctly, a rule could fire at the wrong point, and totally throw off all the price calculations.
Oh, so attention to detail is key when managing these rules.
Yeah.
What about testing these rules? How do administrators ensure that they're working as intended?
That's where the pipeline viewer comes in. This tool allows administrators to simulate various scenarios and observe precisely how rules impact that configuration process. It's a great way to catch errors and just ensure that everything is functioning smoothly.
That sounds like an invaluable tool. Are there any other factors to consider when testing and deploying these configuration rules?
Yes, something called configuration cache. That can affect how quickly rule changes take effect. So basically, the system stores a snapshot of the configuration to improve performance.
Okay, so how do administrators work around this caching mechanism if they need to test changes frequently?
They have two options. They can either deploy the configuration after each change, which refreshes the cache, or they can temporarily disable the cache for testing purposes.
It seems like there are ways to streamline the testing process, even with that added complexity of caching. This has been incredibly insightful. We've covered a lot of ground, from understanding the different types of configuration rules to exploring how they function, their hierarchical structure, and even the nuances of managing and testing them.
And we've only just scratched the surface. The truly remarkable aspect is how pervasive configuration rules are. We've been using this pizza analogy, but these principles extend far beyond food ordering. They apply to countless online experiences, from customizing clothing and designing products to configuring complex enterprise software.
It's amazing how these hidden rules shape so much of our digital lives. Before today, I never realized how much thought and logic actually goes into creating a smooth and personalized user experience.
It's easy to take these systems for granted, but behind every seemingly simple interaction, there's a world of intricate rules working tirelessly to ensure everything functions seamlessly.
Yeah, it really is a testament to the ingenuity of those developers and engineers who are building these systems. I mean, they've created this invisible layer of logic that guides us through these really complex processes without us even realizing it's there.
It's kind of like a magic trick, isn't it? The magician's back there manipulating all these things behind the scenes, but all we see is like the seamless execution of the illusion.
Oh, I love that analogy. And what's fascinating to me is that by understanding these configuration rules, we can start to kind of peek behind that curtain a little bit and see how the trick is done. It's empowering to realize that these systems aren't just random or arbitrary, but they're actually built on this foundation of well-defined logic and rules.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of demystifies the online world a bit, doesn't it? We start to see these websites and applications not as like these static entities, but as these dynamic systems that are constantly responding to our inputs and adapting to our choices.
It's like learning a new language, the language of
Oh.
customization and automation. And once you grasp the basics, you can start to decipher the patterns, the relationships, the cause and effect at play.
You start to see the code beneath the surface.
Yeah.
And that just opens up this whole new level of understanding and appreciation.
I used to think of these online forms and configurators as pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
But now, knowing what we know about configuration rules, I see them as these intricate, almost living systems
Yeah.
that are constantly evolving based on how we're interacting with them.
They are incredibly sophisticated,
Mhm.
especially when you consider how they handle those really complex scenarios, like dependencies between different choices or the need to maintain consistency across a vast catalog of products.
Yeah, that brings up a really important point that was mentioned in our source material, the challenges of actual managing configuration rules, especially when you're dealing with these large and complex product sets.
Right. So, for example, ensuring consistency across a massive product catalog, that can be a real headache because you need to make sure that rules that are applied at like a high level don't conflict with those that are defined for specific products further down the line. And then you also have the issue of conflicting rules. What happens when two rules have conditions that could be met simultaneously, but they dictate different actions?
Oh, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. How do administrators prevent those kinds of conflicts from even arising?
It requires meticulous planning and testing, so administrators often use tools that help them visualize the rule hierarchy and dependencies. This helps them spot potential conflicts before they cause problems. They also rely heavily on simulation and testing environments to validate rule behavior under different scenarios.
It's a very complex undertaking, especially for those companies with extensive product offerings or those really intricate customization options.
Absolutely. And as systems evolve and new features are added, the complexity only grows. It's a constant challenge to maintain that balance between flexibility and control.
This makes me think about like the broader implications of configuration rules. Beyond just the technical aspects, it seems like they have the potential to shape not just user experiences, but actually entire business
That's
models.
a great point. Companies are increasingly using configuration rules to drive innovation and efficiency. They're using them to automate processes, personalize offerings, and optimize their pricing strategies. In some cases, they're even using them to create entirely new products and services.
It's like giving companies this new set of tools to design and deliver value to their customers.
Exactly. And as those tools become more sophisticated, we're likely to see even more creative applications emerge. Imagine, for example, using configuration rules to personalize educational content based on a student's learning style, or to tailor medical treatments to an individual's genetic profile. The possibilities are almost endless.
It's truly mind-blowing to think about the potential impact of these rules. We've gone from discussing pizza toppings to envisioning a future where configuration rules are driving personalized education and healthcare.
And that's what's so exciting about this field. It's constantly evolving, and we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of what's possible.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the power and the potential of configuration rules. What's the one key takeaway that you hope our listeners will walk away with today?
I'd say it's this. The next time you're online, interacting with a website or an app, take a moment to appreciate that hidden layer of logic that's at play. The choices you're making, the options you're seeing, the prices you're paying. They're all being shaped by configuration rules, and understanding how those rules work gives you a whole new level of insight into the digital world.
It's like seeing the Matrix, right? Suddenly, you're aware of this invisible code that's running everything.
Exactly. And with that awareness comes a sense of empowerment. You start to understand the rules of the game, and that allows you to play it more effectively. You can make more informed choices, identify potential pitfalls, and even imagine new possibilities.
Yeah, it's like we've been given this secret decoder ring for the internet. We can see the patterns and understand the language that's driving all these experiences.
And that understanding is incredibly valuable, not just for users, but for anyone who's involved in creating those digital products and services.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you're a developer, a designer, a product manager, even a marketer, understanding configuration rules is essential. It allows you to create more intuitive, efficient, and engaging experiences for those users.
And as we've discussed, it can also unlock new opportunities for innovation and business growth.
So to wrap up our deep dive today, what's
Yeah.
like that one final thought that you would leave our listeners with?
I would encourage everyone to think about the role of configuration rules in their own lives. What are some examples of these rules in action that you've encountered recently? How have they shaped your online experiences? And what possibilities do they hold for the future?
Yeah, those are great questions. I know I'll be looking at those online forms and configurators in a whole new light from now on. I'll be thinking about the logic behind the choices that I'm making and the rules that are guiding me along the way.
And perhaps you'll even start to imagine new ways that configuration rules could be used to improve the products and services that you use every day.
Exactly. Well, this deep dive has not only been informative, but incredibly inspiring. It's given us a glimpse into that intricate world of configuration rules, and it's shown us how these hidden forces are really shaping the digital landscape.
And as the digital world continues to evolve, understanding these rules is only going to become increasingly important.
So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. The more you understand about how things work, the more empowered you become to really shape your own digital experiences. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into configuration rules. We hope you enjoyed the journey.